Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Epsilon Tau Omega Chapter, Golden Sorors share their oral histories.
And I finally became
I'm Xanthine Norris, Xanthine Sales Norris, and I pledged at Alpha Pi, Clark College in Atlanta, Georgia, January 1948. Very strange. Right after the first semester at Clark, and back then, you know, we were living not in the type of dormitories that you live, so you had to go to a place down the hall and all of you would be there talking. And that particular morning, I was the only two of us in the thing. So this lady looked at me, this young lady looked at me and said, "What is your name?" And I said, "Xanthine Sales." So she said, "Had you thought about pledging?" I said, "Yes." So she said, "Which one?" And I said, "Alpha Kappa Alpha." And she said, "Did you look in the mirror?" Now, y'all might not understand what that means. In Atlanta, Georgia, it was still ruled by the Bonds and all of them, these people who were fair-skinned, and I'm not against y'all, okay? I just want y'all to know that. And they were fair-skinned, but that was Atlanta, Georgia then during that time, you know. And so I said to her, which I have always been able to answer the question the way that I've done, I say, I think with my average that any sorority would be happy to have me as a member. And that young lady looked at me and walked out the door. But that's what I had decided to be. So my roommates I had two roommates from Birmingham. And we were, even although we were at Clark, we were kind of noted as the three spots. Because in Atlanta, Georgia, at that time, I want y'all to understand, it was based on color of skin, and you know, and that was still prevalent at the time that I went there. But it didn't bother me because my mother had always taught me, here in Greenville, it didn't matter about your skin color. So when I got ready to pledge, and the Soror that I had known all these years walked, she did not understand, and the city Sorors told me, you didn't have to worry about their accepting you, because she looked around and said to them, if you are thinking about blackballing Xanthine Sales and her two roommates, it's another thought. They are great ladies. They got good grades. So I had to go through that climate, but it didn't bother me. We did not have a chapter. I knew a lot of the Sorors who wanted a chapter because back then we were traveling to Spartanburg, Epsilon, Beta, Omega, and that's where we had our membership. But we finally decided that we wanted to have a chapter in Greenville, so we started working on that. And of course, those of you that might have heard me talk about this when we had the membership for that was for charter members, and I let you know that we always thought, Thomasina Jones and Miss A.J. Bates and all of us, that we were going to have a chapter in Greenville. So we worked hard for that and finally got enough Sorors to it, and we were able to start Epsilon Tau Omega, and Sarah Helen Anderson and Sarah Thompson were the people that spearheaded that for us. And we had the regional director that came and sat down and worked with us. So we were a hard-working group, and we finally got people out of Anderson who wanted to come with us. They didn't want to go all the way to Spartanburg. So we were able to bring those people and those that lived over near the Clemson area. So all of us got together, and we finally got enough. I think it was 16 of us, I think it was, and we finally got enough, and I got enough money that we went ahead and was able to start our chapter. I knew it was a great chapter when we first started because of the ladies that I had known all through the years. And I was very proud of our chapter. And we had people who worked hard. And all of us were people, and most of them were a little bit older than I, so I respected them because they had taught at Sterling for years. And then we had other people. And then we went over to, when you looked at Anderson and the kind of Sorors that we were going to have from that area, I knew that we were going to be a great chapter. Now, Helen Anderson was the first bacillus of ETO, and I was the second bacillus. And then I worked in other capacities. And also I was among the group that started working with the cotillion and all of that. But I have always been interested in working with students and financial aid. I'm still working with United Negro College Fund, to me, which is one of the greatest, because you can sit down and we can get the money for the 5 colleges in South Carolina. So that has always been something that I've always wanted to do, because I was very fortunate when I got ready to go to college that I got financial aid from great, like Greenville News. I had this lady that owned Ivy's, and my father had worked for her. So she gave me the tie when I got ready to go to Atlanta. So she had, so I looked at the giving part that I had received. People like Miss Freddie Stoddard, Thomasina Jones. These were people that had helped me all through the years. So I inherited that. Alpha Kappa Alpha will survive. I think we were going to have to make some changes in some of the rules and regulations we have. It's very difficult for me to sit and watch some of the things that are going. But I also know you have to sometimes have confidence in youth. There are some great kids out there. There are some great children who are growing up in Greenville who are having problems, but they want to pay back also. So I'm not to the point yet that I would say we need to not have sororities in colleges. I think this is a thing that we're going to have to work with and find. It might mean that they might not need to become members quite so early, freshmen, whatever. Maybe a little later in the years, maybe during the junior, senior years.
I'm Helen Roseman Saunders. I pledged at Beta Sigma chapter at South Carolina State College on April the 15th, 1965. Well, I was the only child. So therefore, when I joined the process of becoming a member of Beta Sigma, I inherited sisters. And that was hopefully sisters that would be lifetime sisters. And so at that time, I had an aunt by marriage that was AKA, and my 5th grade teacher was an AKA Lucille Battle, and she was a member of Epsilon to Omega chapter. And so they kind of encouraged me to think AKA as I went off to college. So those 5 of us that was online, there are 2 of us that still continue to maintain constant connection with each other. That was in the 60s, so you had, the process was you joined the Ivy Club, and then once you completed that and kept your grades up, then you went on to be pledges. So we would join like in 1 semester in the spring, and then we had that summer, and then you had that fall of keeping in contact with big sisters and communicating with them by letter writing, because we didn't have the technology that we had today. And so I went over in the spring of '65. So it was a process. There are some things that bond you together and made you stronger as a group than an individual. So it's quite different now, but then it was the 60s and climate was different. So a wonderful experience, especially after you have gone through the process of doing the things that you had to do and coming to that night, which was a Thursday night when we came out and was peeing and came out on the yard. It was a wonderful experience to know that you were finally a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, a Soror. The Sorors that, with my big sisters, my grad advisor, the Sorors at home that influenced me, helped me look at my values and set things that I wanted to achieve. And I think that has, by the grace of God and my family and sorority, I think has helped me make some of the accomplishments that I have made during these 70 plus years. And undergraduate, I was Dean of Pledging, which would be membership chair now, I guess if you put it to that. And then had the opportunity to go to Folk Valley State College for my first regional. And that had to be in the spring of 1967. Stayed in the dormitories. And so you begin to form relationships. And then after I joined Epsilon Tau Omega chapter, I've been grad advisor for Lambda Theta chapter several years. I've been parliamentarian, anti-bacillus, bacillus, cluster coordinator, member at large. Middle granddaughter when she was 4, and I would pick them up and take them to Sunday school. And one day, we was going to Sunday school, and she said, "Grammy, I know how to spell your name." And I said, "Oh, Sierra, that is so nice." She said, A-K-A. So I think it becomes a part of you and your children, your grandchildren. I had sons, so my granddaughters, in the community know AKA, but it does. And when you join, you just don't want to be a member. I know sometimes Sorors have other obligations that they have to do, especially to have young children. But you want to be an active Soror. You want to do the best that you can. You want to give back to the sorority and be a light to those that see you and do a positive way.
But Barbara Powell Sampson Sr. was an AKA. That's my mom, of course. And so I was greatly influenced by her affiliation and all of the great people that she seemed to know who were fellow AKAs. So I knew I would join the sorority when I went to college. There was a club, we had the Ivy Club, as has been mentioned as well, undergraduates who were interested in joining. And we developed a very close camaraderie together as pledgees and also with our older sisters who were our sponsors or mentors at the time. So we had to, everything we had to do together, of course, which was good, but we also did a lot of fun things that I remember the routine that we all had to do that last week of Pledge Week. Then it was called Hell Week. But anyway, we had so much fun getting ready for that. But there were many opportunities to do things together and just enjoy and to learn, really learn what I would call is the clarion call of Alpha Kappa Alpha, and that is service to all mankind. That was just something that was ingrained in your being, in your thinking, and all the activities that we did. It was just emphasized that you did for others. The emphasis was not on yourself. Oh, it was just very, very, very special. You're just full of joy and awe and wonder that you are finally a member of the sorority, and you're soror, whoever. And it was just a big deal. The only changes I would make is in today's culture, I think for the undergraduate chapters, it's a lot of the emphasis on meism and what I want to do and the independence of it all. And I think the overall culture gives them more of a support mechanism to think that that's always the way to be, and it's not. And I think when you're a member of an organization like a sorority, you take on the precepts of that organization and what it intends to do as the organization. It's not just about you as the individual. So I would try very, very hard just to keep trying to get that over to younger sorors, or to younger people even that are considering going into a sorority. The issues are so much larger than they are as an individual. And if they want to be a part of a larger institution or a larger program, they just have to see that. Oh, definitely. Oh, it's very strong, I think, again, going back to the precepts and the foundation of the sorority. It will survive, it will just get stronger. I would just say that those of us that are present sorors have to make sure that younger young ladies that are coming in can really understand that it's a sorority, as also has already been mentioned, is not for everyone. But if you are dedicated to it, you are dedicated to those precepts, and it's just incumbent upon you to do your best to follow them. If you're in school just to be there and just to say, I'm here at this institution, and you're not trying to do your best academically, it's not for you. Trying your best academically, trying your best in terms of your personhood, trying your best in terms of your own moral compass, all of that is a very, very, very important part of being a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha.
Hattie G. Harris. I pledged at Benedict College in one of the best undergrad chapters in the world, Psi chapter. It still is one of the best and all because of the people who were there and because of Benedict College, because I consider Benedict to be one of the best colleges in the world. And then with some of the activities and all, and then with the people who were members of that chapter. It's just impressive. I guess one of the best memories I have is when I was pinned as a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority. And that was one of the best memories for me because it made me feel like I was a part of a great group. And it also diminished an attitude that I had about one of the Sorors when I was pledging. Because I had said that, just wait till I get over, I'm going to get her. And once I was pledged, I forgot all about it. As a matter of fact, we hugged, and we're still friends today. It has influenced my life because I think it helped give me a purpose and a goal in terms of service to others. And for most of my life, that's what I have done. I have served others. And I'm reminded of a poem that says, Lord, as I live from day to day, whenever I kneel to pray, let my prayer be for others. And so that's what I do. I focus on others all the time, even sacrificing my own welfare or what have you. And I think being a part of Alpha Kappa Alpha and knowing that it was a service organization and all, that sort of planted a seed within me to give back and to do the best that I can to help others. Because I'd never heard of Alpha Kappa Alpha until I arrived on Benedict's campus. I graduated from a small high school in Greenville County where information was limited. And when I arrived on Benedict's campus and I saw all those ladies in pink and green, and I saw the bonding spirit that they had. That made me want to be a part of them. However, my freshman English teacher was a Delta, and she prided herself on persuading top freshmen to join Delta Sigma Theta. But I think I got a B because I didn't join Delta. Knowing that you have friends. You know, with my sorority sisters, I know that if I need help, whether it's for advice or what have you, that I can call on them and that they will be there. And to me, that's invaluable. Oh, that sense of pride in being able to sport my pink and green and to walk around with my other sorors and to just joke with the Deltas and the others and the mistakes that they had made and everything. Alpha Kappa Alpha has enabled me to maintain a lot of friendship. It has enabled me to represent our chapter, and it has also enabled me to instill pride and a desire on the part of young ladies. My advice is to always strive for academic excellence and character. To me, those are some essentials necessary to call yourself an Alpha Kappa Alpha woman. When I think about the differences now, I feel a sense of relief. And I feel that sense of relief because when I pledged, I don't think that the purpose of Alpha Kappa Alpha was always uppermost in the minds. And I think that maybe at that time, the members had a little more freedom, or they weren't monitored as much as they should have been. So I think that today, that the focus is on the purpose, more on the purpose than it was then and everything. Because then I think it was just a sense of pride and a sense of belonging or whatnot. And I'm sure that it's still a sense of belonging and everything. But I think that the right motive should be uppermost in the minds of young people. I have mixed emotions. And I have mixed emotions because of so much that the undergrads are doing that I don't think they should be doing. And I feel that unless there is a strong movement to help them understand the real purpose of Alpha Kappa Alpha, that a lot of damage will be done. However, I do believe that in the end, truth and righteousness will prevail, and that Alpha Kappa Alpha will remain a stable organization. With some changes, in my undergrad chapter, I was assistant grammatus, anti-grammatus, and grammatus. And likewise in ETO, I think I served also as Ivy Leaf reporter in addition to grammatus and all. And I've served as chairperson of the bylaws committee. I've been on the program committee. I have chaired the evaluation committee, and now I'm ready to chair the retirement committee.
My name is Lillian Moore Lynn. I pledged in 1961, Beta Z chapter, Central State University. It was Central State College at the time in Wilberforce, Ohio. And as you know, Wilberforce is located in the southern part of Ohio. So Ohio at that time, and probably still is now, was in the midst of integration, segregation, and all of that kinds of things. So we didn't do, as Sir Helen said, we did not have an opportunity to go off campus, you know, as much, you know, because of the situation surrounding us. I had no reference, I had no legacy. I did not come from that although we had some college-educated members of my family, no one had participated in any kind of fraternal organization. So when I came on the campus of Central State in 1959, I didn't know anything about sororities, but of course there was a lot of activity going on. There were what they called, we didn't do stepping, but they did something like just parading out in the streets, strolling, thank you, that's the term. And so you got as a student to see the different sororities and the fraternities and how they strolled. And one thing that I noticed was that all of the leaders, all of the female leaders on the campus were AKAs, and so I just kind of started looking up to them. And my college advisor was an AKA. I worked in the education building on campus, and 2 of the women in that group were AKAs and very active AKAs. So I had dynamic leadership, to look up to. And that's really as far as deciding what to do, like I said, I had no reference, but these women, really gave me a reference point, and the way they carried themselves really led me to think, well, this is an organization I want to be a part of. I found a church immediately, and upon finding a church, I'd gone several Sundays. I hadn't joined, but I liked the church, and so I happened to be coming out from service one day, and I saw this lady go to her car, and she had an AKA license plate, and she happens to be the basilisk of our chapter now. And at that time, I ran and caught up with her, and I said, "I see you're an AKA." I said, "I'm a soror as well." I said, "Where's the chapter? Where's the meeting? Where, how?" And so I ended up actually transferring into Epsilon Tau Omega before I joined the church, which was backwards, really. But I'm always cognizant of the way I carry myself in public, and at home too sometimes when I'm, around others, because I want to always uphold the standards that, were ingrained in me as a young person in the sorority. So I always make a point of trying to look my best when I'm out, and I always try to attend events and be politically active, and also to be of service, because that is our motto, service to all mankind. Alpha Kappa Alpha has always had a spokesperson at the table. Even we were first in Congress, actually. And one of the things I can say about Epsilon Tau Omega, it is there's a lot of members, 150, but I came from a chapter that had 400 plus members, Alpha Omega chapter in Cleveland. That's the first grad chapter. They recently I'll give them a little plug, they just recently celebrated 100 years of their chartering. They were chartered in 1917, and I was with that chapter longer than I have been with this one, of course, but I did. But the beautiful thing about being in Epsilon Tau Omega is that I've gotten to know practically all the members. I would suggest to them that they look to their leaders. I would suggest to them also that they attend as many meetings as regionals, boulets, clusters, leadership conferences they can, because that's where you actually learn. Some sorors learn because of family members prior to coming into the chapter. I didn't have that opportunity. I learned actually being a part of the chapters, Beta Z chapter, Alpha Omega chapter when I was in Cleveland, and now Epsilon Tau Omega.
I have an older sister who's been in Alpha Kappa Alpha maybe 70, 75 years, still living. I talked to her last night, and she lives in Pasadena, California.
And for you, it's 50?
Yes, 50. Madre, 55.
And how have those 55 years been?
Oh, they've been wonderful. I've had an opportunity to participate actively for several years in Epsilon Tau Omega. And then I moved to Charlotte, and I have enjoyed the activities of the
regional and national meetings. So, yes, it's been wonderful. I have 3 daughters, and they're Alpha Kappa Alpha members. 2 were members of Lambda Theta, and my oldest daughter went to Florida State, and she joined down there. And I knew her advisor.
And what about you? You joined where?
I joined at Gamma Nu in Orangeburg, South Carolina, at Claflin University. My older sister was an AKA, and my sisters bought most of my clothes. And the sister in California, that's the AKA, would send me things that related to AKA, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority. So, and I lived on the street that would be considered a block or less from Claflin University, so I was there all the time. Listen, make sure you understand the rules that they're giving you, that you do not own Alpha Kappa Alpha. You become a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha. And the same way you go in, you can put out. And remember that you do not control anyone else but yourself.
And you're very adamant when you talk about that.
Yes, because I was a member of, I advised Beta Sigma, Helen, and I advised Gamma Nu. And I was, at that time, a member of the chapter in Orangeburg. And one of the older Sorors in the chapter emphasized that to me, and also made certain that the younger Sorors knew that they were not in control of anybody else in the chapter but themselves. And they were not to give instructions and criticisms and control anyone else in that organization but themselves. And so I took on that as a part of my understanding of the organization, and I tried to pass that on. I think AKAs will last. The only thing that I understand that more undergraduate chapters are getting expelled off campuses. And I have 2 nieces that are AKAs, but I also have 2 nieces who may have joined, and one thought that she was going to join and found out when she got to the college that it had been expunged from the university. And she called me that night in the middle of the night and was crying, and I couldn't understand why, and she was explaining. And she had gone to the administration to inquire. And that's what I encouraged. I said, find out, don't ask the undergraduates, find out from the administration. Go to the counselor's office or the dean's office and ask. I said, because you don't want to do anything that would impede your participation in the organization. Because Sorors have a tendency to look over the freshmen and determine who they want. And that's a decision that, to me, is not their prerogative. And they have no reason to offend young women who are on the campus, have not joined, that they don't want them in their organization. I love Alpha Kappa Alpha. And when I was a child, my oldest sister taught me about Alpha Kappa Alpha and anything else I needed to know as I was growing up. And I had a lot of bosses. I was the youngest of the girls in my family. So I was unfortunate that my mother died 4 months after I was born. And after searching, and if you're interested, make that decision yourself and don't have anyone else make the decisions for you. Because you have to live with that organization. They may not be a part of the organization. And some of them are not members of the sorority, which means that they may say negative things that would deter them and make them not want to be a member. And I don't think that's fair.
I became an AKA in 1962 at North Carolina A&T State University in Greensboro, North Carolina. I was initiated into Alpha Phi. I had an aunt that was an AKA, and I always respected her, and she had me as a debutante in the cotillion when I was a junior in high school. So I didn't know anything else. So when I went to college, my sister went to A&T before I did, and she was initiated into Alpha Phi. And she said to me, if you pledge AKA, I'll pay for it. So that's another reason that I'm an AKA, but I always respected the AKAs that were on campus, and that's what I wanted to be, was an Alpha Kappa Alpha woman. Sisterhood is one of the best parts of being an AKA. When I went to A&T, there was not another female from my high school class that went. So they became my sisters, they became my friends, so that has always been good. Also the leadership possibilities that are available by being an AKA. Holding an office, speaking out at public events at the college, and those sorts of things. So I think sisterhood and leadership, and also programs, it taught me to have more concern for the public, for what I could do in the community, what kind of service I could give. I think there were more restrictions. At North Carolina A&T, all of the sororities had one room. And like in the basement of one of the dormitories, you had a room that was your sorority room. And we limited most of our activities to that. Also, when I was at A&T, Sarah Lucia Pickett was Mid-Atlantic Regional Director. Her husband was a coach at A&T, and she worked on the campus. So we were monitored all of the time. She came to our meetings when I was in the pledge group, in the Ivy group. She came to our meetings, so we weren't allowed to do a lot of hazing or any of that. Now, that I'm sure has changed. I hope that we have a thriving future. I hope that Alpha Kappa Alpha will continue to grow and to do great things as it's doing now. I'm afraid that maybe undergraduate chapters may no longer exist eventually. Unless we can convince young ladies that they should be sisterly and not look at what kinds of things they can do to, I don't know if they think that builds bonds or what, but I think there will always be Alpha Kappa Alpha, but I think it might have to thrive on the graduate level. I think that it has helped my career. I was English department head at Greenville Technical College, and the college allowed me to go to leadership training through Alpha Kappa Alpha. So it provided the same kind of leadership that I would need to do any kind of job that I had, any type of employment that I was in. And I took like the schedule and showed them what we were going to be doing at leadership, and they agreed with that. So it did have an effect on my job, I think. I would say to take a look at Alpha Kappa Alpha's purpose and make sure that when you choose Alpha Kappa Alpha, that you chose it for that purpose, and you didn't choose it just to be able to step, or you didn't choose it just to be able to wear paraphernalia, that you know what Alpha Kappa Alpha is about, and that's your reason for wanting to be an Alpha Kappa Alpha woman. I'm a very emotional person, and I can remember the tears and the happiness the day that I became an Alpha Kappa Alpha woman. I think that's one of my fondest memories. I know that all colleges initiated ladies differently, but at North Carolina A&T we had what was called the Bowl, and down in the Bowl there was it was like a parking lot for several dormitories, and once you became any of the Greek organizations, you went in the Bowl and you danced and partied and sang songs, and those are just such fond memories, and everybody was happy, and all of the other Greek organizations would join you there, and it was just a happy time. We have a foundation, and I'm vice president now of the foundation. I also serve on the health committee, so we do a lot of projects throughout the city and the community with the health project. I'm also on the archives committee, and that's the committee that we are here today for. And I think I participate in the chapter. I do whatever I need, whatever I'm asked to do. My philosophy is I may not pass this way again, so I have to do what I can do now. So that's why I feel it's important to serve. My purpose here on earth is not just to be Linda Jones and doing nothing but just living. I think that I need to do whatever I can for others as well. And another thing about being an Alpha Kappa Alpha woman is there are Alpha Kappa Alpha women all over the states and internationally. And I love to travel. And it's a kind of security knowing that you have sisters no matter where you go.
My name is Mary LaVon Thompson. I go by LaVon Thompson. I brought up here in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm a legacy, so I was introduced to the sorority as a result of my mother having been initiated into Epsilon Tau Omega in 1960. So grew up consuming and knowing nothing but Alpha Kappa Alpha. Additionally, just as Sarah Linda said, I was a cotillion, a debutante, in December of 1964 as a senior in high school here in Greenville. I went to an all-women's college, Bennett College, where there were no sororities. And as a result of being a legacy and interested in having high school teachers among them Soror Xanthine, who was my French teacher, other charter members, Soror, we called her Soror A.J. Bates or Annie Jenkins Bates, Soror T.P. Jones or Thomasina Jones. These were all teachers of mine. So having grown up with teachers, members, including my mother, her friends, it was apparent that I was going to be an Alpha Kappa Alpha woman. And I was initiated in my mother's house in November of 1967. So I'm the newest of the Golden Sorors among the elite circle, Ivy of one. So there were no other, I was not on a line like you're hearing from the other Golden Sorors. I was a line of one. As a result, I was sponsored by Epsilon Tau Omega, but initiated as a Boule member. The initiation process occurred over one summer, the summer of 1967. And I found this morning a little handmade visitation booklet that I prepared, because one of the things that the graduate chapter required me to do, in addition to scrapbook, doing some service project, was to go around and visit every active sorority member, part of Epsilon Tau Omega. So as such, I had to call and set up a visitation schedule to see everyone. Some were luncheons, some were tea times, some took me out. My mother pinned me. And so that was a very emotional day and very touching. As a legacy, and I'm getting emotional now, but as a legacy, what I truly miss is that my mother was not here to see me reach Golden. And this would have been something that she would have loved to see me do. I went back to Bennett as an AKA, and when I got back to Bennett, because I was a junior, when I got back to Bennett, it turns out the two other persons had done the same thing, unbeknownst to either of us, had gone through their graduate chapters in their hometown. And so we showed up, and we were in pink and green. And so we said, oh, and although there were no formal sororities on chapter, there were three of us. As a result of, as I mentioned, the graduate faculty members, we said to them, we would like for you to do for those persons who may be interested what the city chapters or home chapters did for us. So in my senior year, 5 initially through the Greensboro City chapter were initiated or pledged way back in 1967 as Ivies. One dropped out. No, I think it started with 6, and 1 dropped out. And so then it was a line of 5 that was initiated. And so we had a great time. Most of them were seniors, so we had a great time our senior year because we were 8 on campus. We went over and we saw and participated with the North Carolina A&T undergraduate chapter. And actually, I remember that the North Carolina A&T undergraduate chapter came over, and back then they did step shows. And so they came over to Bennett and stepped on our campus, as well as some of the other Greek fraternities and sororities that were on campus at North Carolina A&T State University. I think you would need to be sincere and serious about your commitment. And if it is to further your resume or your advancement, then it might not be the right thing for you. But if it is about service, sisterhood, bonding, sharing, then I think that you would want to be a part of our organization. Having left Greenville, I have been active throughout my 50 years as members in the St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota chapter. I have been active in the Providence, Rhode Island chapter, and most recently, for the last 28 years, a part of the international region, a member of the St. Croix U.S. Virgin Islands chapter. So I felt that it was important everywhere I went and lived that I connected and found other sorors, particularly if they were in the area, because it was important to connect, bond, and be a part of the sisterhood as you travel and live and experience.
And in your travels, does Alpha Kappa Alpha change?
I don't think so. You've got a core of women who are there for the same reasons, and I typically try to associate and be a part of those women, and it has just been a varied and wide and great experience for me. This has just been a new experience, or a renewed experience for me coming back into Epsilon Tau Omega. It's a full circle moment for me, having been initiated or sponsored by them 50 years ago, and to now be back home, or back to the roots.
N-A-K-A, 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 N-A-K-A.
I'm Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority member and TV journalist Sharon Johnson. Interviews were conducted at the home of Alpha Kappa Alpha member and Archives chairperson Violeta Irby in Simpsonville, South Carolina. Archives committee members: Violeta Irby, chairperson; Michelle Beasley, Karen Cook, Juanita Edwards, Linda Jones, Christine Pearson, Mary Randolph, Charlotte Walker, and Joyce Young.
I got my pearls, I got my